All right, let's unpack this fascinating world of stem cells. We've got a great excerpt from Wikipedia, so we're going beyond the basics today. We're going to be talking about the quest for the ideal stem cell.
It's a fascinating pursuit. For a long time, embryonic stem cells were considered the gold standard because they're pluripotent. They can become virtually any cell in the body.
Right, the ultimate blank slate. But of course, that comes with ethical considerations, which spurred the search for alternatives. So where did that lead scientists?
Well, it led to some incredible discoveries, like adult stem cells found in specific niches throughout the body. These are multipotent, meaning they can become a limited range of cell types.
Okay, so not quite as versatile, but still incredibly important for tissue repair and regeneration. We see this with bone marrow transplants, right? That's been a game changer for leukemia and other blood cancers.
Exactly. Bone marrow transplants have been a remarkable success story, proving that stem cell therapies can have a real impact on human health.
It's amazing to think that something so powerful is already being used in medicine. But the search for the ideal stem cell continued. I'm thinking about induced pluripotent stem cells, or iPSCs. They were a real breakthrough, weren't they?
Absolutely. iPSCs are adult cells that are reprogrammed back into an embryonic-like state, giving them that pluripotency we see in embryonic stem cells. This was a game changer because it sidestepped the ethical issues surrounding embryos.
Right, and it opened up new possibilities for personalized medicine,
Yeah.
where you could theoretically create stem cells that are a terrific match for a patient, reducing the risk of rejection.
Exactly. But it's not as simple as just flipping a switch. The process of reprogramming cells involves using specific transcription factors, proteins that bind to DNA and control which genes are turned on or off.
You're essentially rewinding the clock on these cells, taking them back to their pluripotent state. That's a good way to put it. But even with iPSCs, there are challenges. They're not identical to embryonic stem cells. There are subtle differences in their gene expression and epigenetic patterns. These are modifications to DNA that affect how genes are expressed.
Okay, so even with these groundbreaking discoveries, scientists are still working to refine the process, to truly unlock the potential of these cells. What are some of the other challenges they face?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is controlling differentiation. Remember, stem cells have the potential to become many different cell types. But for therapies to be effective, we need to be able to guide them down a specific path. We need to tell them, become a heart cell or become a neuron.
Right, like giving them a cellular GPS system.
Exactly. And this is where things get tricky. Scientists are still deciphering the complex signaling pathways that control cell fate decisions. They're experimenting with different growth factors, hormones, and even changes in the physical environment to coax stem cells into becoming the desired cell type.
It sounds incredibly complex, like a delicate dance of cellular signals. It is. And another challenge is maintaining the purity of stem cell cultures in the lab. Remember, these cells are constantly dividing and have the potential to differentiate. If you're not careful, your culture can become a mixed bag of different cell types, which isn't very useful for therapies.
Right. It's like trying to keep a garden free of weeds. So how do scientists keep those cultures pure?
It requires a very controlled environment and specific techniques. They use specialized media that provides the necessary nutrients and growth factors to keep the stem cells happy and pluripotent. And they have to be incredibly careful to avoid contamination with bacteria or fungi, which can quickly ruin a culture.
So it's a constant balancing act, keeping those stem cells healthy, pluripotent, and free from unwanted guests. It sounds like a full-time job.
It definitely is. But the work is incredibly rewarding, knowing that these cells have the potential to transform medicine as we know it.
Speaking of transforming medicine, let's talk about some of the most exciting potential applications of stem cells.
Yeah.
We've already touched on bone marrow transplants, but where else are we seeing progress?
The list is constantly growing. Stem cell therapies are being investigated for a wide range of conditions, including diabetes, heart disease, neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, spinal cord injuries, and even eye diseases.
Wow, it really does seem like every area of medicine is being touched by stem cell research. Let's take a closer look at a few of these areas. What about diabetes? How could stem cells potentially help there?
Well, in type 1 diabetes, the body's immune system attacks the insulin-producing beta cells in the pancreas. Scientists are exploring the possibility of using stem cells to replace those lost beta cells.
So essentially creating a new source of insulin for the body.
Exactly. They're working on ways to differentiate stem cells into beta cells and then transplant them into the patient's pancreas.
That's fascinating. Are there any clinical trials underway using this approach?
Yes. There are a number of early-stage trials exploring this concept. It's still too early to say how effective it will be, but the initial results are promising.
It's amazing to think that we might one day be able to cure a disease like diabetes with a stem cell transplant.
It is, and similar approaches are being investigated for other conditions, like heart disease. Scientists are exploring the use of stem cells to repair damaged heart tissue after a heart attack.
So instead of just managing the symptoms of heart failure, we could actually regenerate the heart muscle itself.
That's the goal. And the potential applications go even further. Stem cells are being studied for their ability to repair damaged nerves in the brain and spinal cord.
So we're talking about potential treatments for spinal cord injuries, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, conditions that were once considered incurable.
Exactly. And the research is moving at an incredible pace. Every year, we're seeing new discoveries, new breakthroughs, new possibilities.
It's truly remarkable to witness the unfolding of this cellular revolution. But I know there are also challenges and setbacks along the way. What are some of the obstacles that scientists are still grappling with?
One of the biggest hurdles is the complexity of the human body. It's one thing to grow cells in a dish, but it's quite another to get them to integrate and function properly within a living organism.
Right, it's like trying to fit a puzzle piece into a constantly moving puzzle.
Exactly. We're dealing with a dynamic, intricate system, and there's still so much we don't understand about how stem cells interact with their environment and how to control their behavior once they're transplanted.
So it's a constant process of discovery and refinement.
It is. And another challenge is the cost and complexity of developing stem cell therapies. These are not simple treatments. They require specialized facilities, highly trained personnel, and rigorous quality control measures.
Right, so it's not just about the science, it's also about the logistics and the economics of bringing these therapies to patients.
Absolutely. And then there are the ethical considerations, which we've touched on briefly. The use of embryonic stem cells continues to be a subject of debate. And as we delve deeper into genetic manipulation and cellular engineering, we're bound to encounter new ethical dilemmas.
It's a constant balancing act, weighing the potential benefits of stem cell research against the potential risks and ethical concerns. But it's clear that this field holds immense promise for the future of medicine.
It does, and it's important to remember that we're still in the early stages of this journey. The discoveries we're making today are just the tip of the iceberg.
It's exciting to think about what the future holds for stem cell research, and I'm sure you have some thoughts on that.
Well, one area that I think will see tremendous growth is personalized medicine. The ability to create stem cell therapies that are tailored to an individual's genetic makeup is a game changer.
It's like having a custom-designed treatment plan at the cellular level. What else do you see on the horizon for stem cell research?
Another exciting frontier is the development of organoids, miniature organs grown in the lab using stem cells.
Organoids, that sounds straight out of science fiction.
It might sound futuristic, but it's becoming a reality. Scientists are already growing mini versions of hearts, lungs, brains, and other organs using stem cells.
Okay, wait. You're saying that scientists are growing tiny organs in a dish?
Yes. They're using these organoids to study human development, to model diseases, and even to test new drugs. It's a revolutionary tool that's accelerating our understanding of human biology.
That's incredible. So instead of experimenting on animals or waiting for human trials, we can actually study human organs in a controlled environment.
Exactly. And the potential applications go even further. Scientists are exploring the use of organoids for transplantation. Imagine being able to grow a new heart or liver in the lab using a patient's own cells.
Whoa, that would completely change the landscape of organ transplantation.
It would, and it's not just about replacing damaged organs. Scientists are also using organoids to study how organs develop in the first place. This could lead to new ways to prevent birth defects and developmental disorders.
It sounds like organoid research is opening up a whole new chapter in medicine.
It is, and it's just one example of the transformative potential of stem cell technology. As we continue to unravel the mysteries of these remarkable cells, we're bound to discover even more incredible applications.
This is all so fascinating. We've covered a lot of ground already, from the basics of stem cells to the quest for the ideal cell, the challenges of working with them, and their potential applications in various fields. But there's still so much to explore.
There is. We haven't even touched on the potential for stem cells to enhance human capabilities, to extend lifespan, or to bridge the gap between humans and machines.
Whoa, those are some big ideas. It sounds like stem cell research is forcing us to confront some fundamental questions about what it means to be human.
It is. And as we delve deeper into this uncharted territory, we need to proceed with both curiosity and caution, ensuring that our pursuit of scientific progress serves the greater good of humanity.
Well said. So what else could we unpack for our listener in this deep dive into the world of stem cells?
There's a lot more to uncover. Let's talk about an area where stem cell science intersects with ethics in a particularly complex way. Stem cell tourism.
Okay, this is where things get a little murky, right?
It can be. We're talking about clinics offering stem cell treatments that haven't been rigorously tested or approved, often targeting patients with debilitating conditions who are desperate for a cure.
So they prey on hope and vulnerability, making bold claims that might not have any scientific backing. That's scary.
It is, and the potential consequences can be serious. There have been reports of adverse effects, ranging from infections to tumor growth, linked to these unproven treatments.
It's a reminder that we need to be discerning consumers of medical information, especially when it comes to something as complex as stem cell therapy. What are some red flags that people should watch out for?
One big red flag is a clinic that promises miracle cures or claims to treat a wide range of unrelated conditions with stem cells. Legitimate stem cell therapies are usually targeted at specific diseases and backed by solid research.
So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Right. Also, be wary of clinics that are vague about the source of their stem cells or the details of their treatment protocol. Legitimate clinics should be transparent about their methods and able to provide evidence to support their claims.
It's like any major medical decision. You want to do your research and get a second opinion.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to ask tough questions. If a clinic is pressuring you into making a quick decision or dismissing your concerns, that's a bad sign.
So stem cell tourism is a reminder that there's a lot of hype and misinformation out there, and it's important to be critical and informed. And I want to switch gears a bit and talk about something we touched on earlier, the concept of cell lineage. It sounds like a cellular detective story, tracing the family tree of a stem cell. Why is this so important in stem cell research?
It's crucial because it helps us understand the journey a stem cell takes as it specializes. By mapping out the different stages of differentiation, we can gain insights into how stem cells behave in different environments and how they respond to various signals.
So it's not just about knowing what a stem cell can become, but also understanding the path it takes to get there.
Precisely. This knowledge is essential for developing safe and effective stem cell therapies. We need to ensure that the cells we transplant will differentiate into the desired cell types and not go off track.
It's like giving them a detailed roadmap, making sure they reach the right destination without any unexpected detours.
That's a great analogy. And lineage tracing also allows us to study the factors that influence cell fate. By observing how stem cells behave under different conditions, we can identify the signals that trigger differentiation into specific cell types.
So it's about understanding the cellular language that guides stem cell behavior. This knowledge could be incredibly valuable for developing new therapies. Are there specific tools or techniques that scientists use to trace cell lineage?
There are. One common technique involves using fluorescent markers that can be passed down from a parent cell to its daughter cells. This allows researchers to track the progeny of a single stem cell and observe how they differentiate over time.
So it's like creating a glowing family portrait of a stem cell, highlighting all of its descendants.
Exactly. And by analyzing these lineage trees, scientists can uncover patterns and insights that wouldn't be visible otherwise. It's like piecing together a puzzle, revealing the intricate connections between stem cells and their specialized offspring.
It's incredible to think that we can trace the history of a single cell and watch as it gives rise to an entire lineage of specialized cells.
It is. And this knowledge is helping us unlock the secrets of development and regeneration, paving the way for new treatments for a wide range of diseases.
But I want to circle back to mesenchymal stem cells, or MSCs. You mentioned earlier that they're found in various adult tissues and have the potential to differentiate into different cell types. What makes them so special?
MSCs are fascinating because they're like the multi-talented members of the stem cell family. They're not as restricted in their potential as some other adult stem cells. They can become bone cells, cartilage cells, fat cells, and even muscle cells.
So they're like the Swiss Army knives of the cellular world.
That's a great way to put it. Their versatility makes them incredibly valuable for regenerative medicine. They're being investigated for their potential to treat osteoarthritis, heart disease, spinal cord injuries, and even autoimmune diseases.
That's a pretty diverse range of conditions.
It is, and one of the things that makes MSCs particularly interesting is that they seem to have immunomodulatory properties.
Immunomodulatory. What does that mean?
It means they can interact with the immune system and help regulate its activity. They can dampen down inflammation and promote tissue repair by releasing various signaling molecules.
So they're not just about replacing damaged cells, but also about orchestrating the body's own healing response.
Exactly. This makes them particularly attractive for treating conditions like autoimmune diseases, where the immune system is attacking the body's own tissues.
It's like they're the peacekeepers of the cellular world, calming things down and promoting harmony.
That's a great way to think about it. And because MSCs are relatively easy to isolate and grow in the lab, they've become a popular choice for research and clinical trials.
So MSCs are the rising stars of the stem cell world, with potential applications in a wide range of fields. Now, I want to touch on a topic that often comes up in discussions about stem cells: cloning. There seems to be a lot of confusion and controversy surrounding this issue.
There is. It's important to distinguish between different types of cloning. When people hear the word cloning, they often think of reproductive cloning, which is the creation of a genetically identical copy of an entire organism.
Right, like Dolly the sheep.
Exactly. But in context of stem cell research, we're usually talking about therapeutic cloning, which involves creating cloned embryos for the purpose of extracting stem cells.
So the goal isn't to create a new organism, but to harvest stem cells that are a perfect genetic match for the donor.
Precisely. These stem cells could then be used to develop personalized therapies, reducing the risk of rejection.
I can see how that would be appealing from a medical standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
but I imagine there are ethical concerns surrounding this type of cloning.
There are. The main concern is that it involves creating and then destroying human embryos, which raises ethical questions about the moral status of the embryo.
Right. It's a complex issue with no easy answers. And I imagine this type of cloning faces legal restrictions in many countries.
It does. Many countries have banned or severely restricted reproductive cloning. And therapeutic cloning is also highly regulated. It's a sensitive area where scientific progress and ethical considerations need to be carefully balanced.
It sounds like we're navigating a complex landscape, both scientifically and ethically, when it comes to stem cells and cloning. But let's not forget that there are also naturally occurring stem cells within our bodies, working tirelessly to repair and regenerate tissues.
Absolutely. Our bodies are incredible machines, constantly renewing themselves at the cellular level. We've already discussed adult stem cells, but there's another type that's equally fascinating: cancer stem cells.
Cancer stem cells. That sounds like a contradiction in terms.
It might seem counterintuitive, but these cells are thought to play a key role in the development and spread of certain types of cancer.
So instead of promoting healing, these stem cells are actually fueling disease.
Unfortunately, yes. They share many characteristics with normal stem cells, including the ability to self-renew and differentiate. But in cancer, these abilities go awry, leading to uncontrolled growth and the formation of tumors.
So they're like the rogue agents of the cellular world, turning against the body they're supposed to be helping.
That's a good way to think about it. And cancer stem cells pose a significant challenge to traditional cancer treatments, which often target rapidly dividing cells.
How so?
Well, cancer stem cells tend to be more resistant to these therapies. They can lie dormant, evading detection, and then reemerge, leading to relapse.
So even if you kill off most of the tumor cells, those sneaky cancer stem cells can stick around and cause problems down the road.
Exactly. And because they can differentiate into various cell types, they contribute to tumor heterogeneity, making it harder to find a treatment that targets all the cancerous cells.
It sounds like they're a formidable foe in the fight against cancer.
Yeah. They are. But understanding cancer stem cells is crucial for developing more effective treatments. Scientists are exploring ways to specifically target these cells, either by killing them directly or by finding ways to reprogram them back into normal, healthy cells.
So it's like trying to turn those rogue agents back into productive members of the cellular community.
Precisely. And this research is shedding light on the fundamental mechanisms of cancer, leading to new strategies for prevention, diagnosis, and treatment.
It's a fascinating, albeit complex, area of stem cell research. Now, I want to touch on a topic that we've mentioned a few times: cell potency. Can you explain what that means and why it's so important?
Cell potency refers to the range of cell types that a stem cell can differentiate into. It's a spectrum of possibilities, with some stem cells having a broader potential than others.
This is like a hierarchy of cellular ability.
Exactly. At the top of the hierarchy, we have totipotent stem cells. These cells have the ability to become any cell type in the body, including the cells that make up the placenta.
Wow, so they can literally give rise to an entire organism.
They can. They're found in the very early stages of embryonic development. before the cells start to specialize.
Okay, so that's totipotency, the ultimate level of cellular potential. What about the other levels?
Next, we have pluripotent stem cells, like embryonic stem cells and iPSCs. They can become almost any cell type in the body, but not the placental cells.
So they're incredibly versatile, but not quite as powerful as totipotent cells.
Right. And then we have multipotent stem cells, like adult stem cells and most fetal stem cells. These cells have a more restricted potential, typically differentiating into a limited range of cell types within their tissue of origin.
So they're more specialized, focusing on a particular area of expertise.
Exactly. And understanding the different levels of cell potency is crucial for choosing the right type of stem cell for a particular therapeutic application.
It's like selecting the right tool for the job, making sure you have the right level of cellular potential to achieve the desired outcome.
Precisely. And as our understanding of cell potency grows, we'll be able to develop even more targeted and effective stem cell therapies.
Now, I want to touch on a crucial aspect of stem cell biology that you haven't discussed yet, the role of genetics. How does a stem cell's DNA influence its behavior?
A stem cell's genetic makeup is like its instruction manual, dictating its potential and influencing its ability to self-renew, differentiate, and respond to its environment.
So it's like the blueprint that guides the cell's actions and determines its fate.
Exactly. And scientists are using powerful genetic tools to decipher the complex interplay of genes that govern stem cell behavior. They're identifying genes that promote self-renewal, genes that trigger differentiation, and genes that control how stem cells interact with their surroundings.
It's like decoding the cellular language of stem cells, understanding how their genes orchestrate their actions.
Precisely. And this knowledge is essential for developing safe and effective stem cell therapies. By understanding the genetic underpinnings of stem cell behavior, we can fine-tune their differentiation, enhance their survival, and ensure their safety when transplanted into the body.
It's like editing the cell's instruction manual, making sure it has the right genetic code to carry out its therapeutic mission.
That's a great way to put it. And with advances in gene editing technologies, like CRISPR, the possibilities for manipulating stem cell genetics are expanding rapidly.
So we're entering a new era of cellular engineering, where we can rewrite the genetic code of stem cells to enhance their therapeutic potential.
Absolutely. And this holds immense promise for treating diseases that were once considered incurable. Imagine being able to correct genetic defects in stem cells before transplanting them, effectively curing inherited diseases at their root.
It's a fascinating and somewhat daunting prospect. It sounds like we're on the verge of a new era in medicine, one where we can manipulate the very building blocks of life.
We are, and with this power comes a tremendous responsibility. As we delve deeper into the realm of genetic manipulation, we need to proceed with caution, ensuring that we use these powerful tools ethically and responsibly.
It's a reminder that scientific progress and ethical considerations must go hand in hand. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on something that we briefly mentioned earlier, the challenges of maintaining stem cells in the lab. It sounds like it's a delicate balancing act.
It is. Keeping stem cells happy and pluripotent in a dish is a bit like trying to recreate the perfect environment for a rare orchid. It requires specific conditions and a lot of attention to detail.
So what are some of the key factors that scientists have to consider when culturing stem cells?
Well, first, you need the right kind of home for them. They're very sensitive to their surroundings and require special surfaces coated with materials like gelatin or feeder cells to mimic the conditions inside an embryo.
So it's like creating a miniature womb for them.
Exactly. And then you need to feed them the right nutrients. Stem cell culture media is a complex cocktail of vitamins, minerals, growth factors, and other ingredients that are carefully balanced to keep the stem cells healthy and pluripotent.
It's like concocting a gourmet meal for these picky cellular eaters.
Precisely. And you need to keep them safe from contamination. Stem cell cultures are incredibly sensitive to bacteria, fungi, and other unwanted guests. So scientists work in sterile environments and use specialized techniques to maintain the purity of their cultures.
So it's a constant battle against contamination, making sure these precious cells are protected from any invaders.
It is. Maintaining a sterile environment is crucial. Any contamination can ruin a culture and set back research significantly.
It sounds like a lot of work. But it's clearly worth it, considering the potential of these cells to revolutionize medicine.
It is. And the effort that goes into maintaining stem cells in the lab is a testament to the dedication and passion of the researchers who are working tirelessly to unlock their secrets.
It's truly inspiring. Now, before we move on to our final thoughts on stem cell research, I wanted to bring up a topic that we haven't touched on yet, the potential for stem cells to enhance human capabilities.
It's a fascinating and somewhat controversial area. We've talked about stem cells' potential to heal and regenerate, but what if we could use them to go beyond therapy, to actually enhance human abilities?
Okay, now we're getting into science fiction territory. What kind of enhancements are we talking about?
Yeah.
Super strength, telekinesis.
Not quite that dramatic, but imagine using stem cells to enhance muscle recovery in athletes, improve cognitive function, or even slow down the aging process.
So instead of just treating diseases, we're talking about pushing the boundaries of human potential.
Exactly. And as our understanding of stem cell biology and gene editing advances, the line between therapy and enhancement could become increasingly blurred.
It's a fascinating but also ethically complex concept. Where do we draw the line? And who gets to decide?
Those are important questions. We need to have thoughtful discussions about the potential implications of these technologies, both for individuals and society as a whole.
Right. It's not just about the scientific possibilities. It's also about the social and ethical ramifications.
Exactly. We need to consider issues of fairness, access, and the potential for unintended consequences.
It sounds like we're entering a whole new era, one where we have to redefine what it means to be human.
It is a profound shift. And it's important that we approach these advancements with a sense of responsibility and a commitment to using them for the betterment of humanity.
Well said. Now, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier. The potential for stem cells to bridge the gap between humans and machines. That really captured my imagination.
It's a mind-boggling concept, isn't it? Imagine using stem cells to create biocompatible interfaces between our bodies and electronic devices.
So instead of just implanting a device, we could seamlessly integrate it into our tissues, creating a true partnership between biology and technology.
Precisely. We could use stem cells to grow nerve connections between our brains and computers, allowing us to control machines with our thoughts or to receive sensory input from electronic sensors.
It sounds like we're stepping into the realm of science fiction. But with stem cell technology advancing so rapidly, who knows what the future holds?
It's an exciting and somewhat unsettling prospect. It challenges our very understanding of what it means to be human.
It does. And it raises all sorts of ethical questions. What are the implications for privacy, autonomy, and even the definition of consciousness?
These are complex issues that we need to grapple with as these technologies become more sophisticated.
It's a lot to think about, but it's clear that stem cell research is pushing the boundaries of science and forcing us to confront some of the biggest questions about life, humanity, and our place in the universe.
It is. And it's a journey that's full of possibilities, challenges, and ethical dilemmas.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into stem cells. We've explored their basic biology, the different types, their potential applications, the challenges of working with them, and the ethical considerations surrounding their use. It's been an incredible journey.
It has, and it's just the beginning. The field of stem cell research is constantly evolving, with new discoveries and breakthroughs happening all the time.
It's an exciting time to be alive, witnessing the unfolding of this cellular revolution. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what final thought would you leave our listener with?
I would say this. Stem cells represent a profound intersection of science, technology, and ethics. They offer the potential to transform medicine, enhance human capabilities, and even redefine what it means to be human. But it's up to us to ensure that we use this power wisely and responsibly for the benefit of all humankind.
Beautifully said. It's a reminder that we're not just passive observers of scientific progress, but active participants in shaping the future. So to our listener, keep exploring, stay curious, and never stop questioning the boundaries of what's possible.
All right, let's dive into Budapest.
Sounds good.
We're talking history, culture, economics, you name it.
The whole shebang.
We got excerpts from Wikipedia and some other great sources, so by the end of this deep dive...
You'll be a Budapest expert, ready to impress.
Even the locals.
That's the goal. You know, Budapest is like a layer cake of history.
Ooh, I like that.
Every layer is fascinating. You've got ancient Roman ruins right next to
Oh, wow.
Art Nouveau architecture, Turkish bathhouses side by side
Clear
with
away.
cutting-edge tech startups.
Really?
It's a city that embraces its past while charging into the future.
I love it. Okay, let's start with the basics. The name itself, Budapest. It seems pretty straightforward, right?
Right.
Buda and Pest.
Divided by the Danube.
But is it really that simple?
Not even close.
Hmm.
The name Budapest actually came about in 1873
Oh, okay.
when three cities,
Ew,
Budapest and Obuda, all merged into one.
3 cities? I didn't know that.
Yep. But the origins of those individual names are way more interesting.
Now we're talking. Okay, so what's the deal with Buda?
So one legend claims it's named after Attila the Hun's brother, Bleda.
Attila the Hun. Wow.
Yeah. The story goes that Attila killed his brother,
Oh, no.
threw his body into the Danube right here in the city.
Dark.
And supposedly he forbade anyone from calling it Buda's castle, but, well,
The name stuck.
exactly.
Wow. Talk about sibling rivalry. Okay, so what about pest?
Pest is a bit more of a mystery. Some say it comes from the Latin word for cave, spelunca,
Makes sense.
because of all the caves in the area. Others say it comes from the Slavic word for oven, pech.
Petch, like a pizza oven?
Exactly. And this could link back to the ancient lime kilns that were in the area.
Oh, interesting. So it's a real...
Etymological puzzle.
I love it. So Buda's got this dramatic, almost mythical origin, while pest is shrouded in mystery. It sounds like these two sides have always had their own distinct personalities.
Absolutely. And that duality is reflected in their geography, too.
Oh, how so?
Picture Buda as the hilly, older sibling with the iconic castle district perched on these limestone cliffs.
Okay, I can picture it.
And these hills are riddled with caves. They were formed by something called karst topography.
Karst topography.
Yeah. Basically, water slowly dissolved the rock over millions of years, creating these underground worlds.
Wow. So Buda is hilly, pest is flat. But is that all there is to it?
You're right, it goes way deeper. Buda, with its castle and winding streets, has always had this air of royalty.
Right, I see what you mean.
While Pest, on the other hand, sprawls across the Great Plain. It's a bit more grounded, you know?
Yeah, more down to earth.
Exactly. And that contrast has shaped their development for centuries.
That's fascinating. So it's like two sides in the same coin. Buda, the majestic, historical side, and Pest, the vibrant, down-to-earth side. Together, they create this really dynamic whole.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk about that history. Budapest's story goes way back, right?
Oh, yeah, way back.
Even before Hungary as we know it.
We're talking ancient Rome. Around 89 A.D., the Romans established Aquincum.
Aquincum.
Yeah, it's this bustling Roman town. It served as the capital of Lower Pannonia.
Lower Pannonia.
And today,
Yeah.
you can actually wander through the ruins of Aquincum in Obuda.
You're kidding. That's incredible. So Budapest has Roman roots.
Absolutely,
What happened after the Romans left? Did it have a medieval period?
of course. The Magyars, the ancestors of modern Hungarians, arrived in the Carpathian Basin in the late 9th century, and Buda became a key settlement. But like many cities in Europe, it faced a major setback in the 13th century,
What happened?
the Mongol invasion.
Oh, right. Genghis Khan and all that.
Exactly.
Not exactly a peaceful time. How did Budapest recover from that?
Well, by the 15th century, it was flourishing again
Really?
as a center of Renaissance culture.
Yeah.
This was largely thanks to King Matthias Corvinus.
Matthias Corvinus.
He transformed Buda into a real Renaissance powerhouse. His library, it rivaled the Vatican's. And he also laid the groundwork for Hungary's first universities.
That's impressive. But wasn't he also known for being a bit of a tyrant?
That's a great question. Matthias was a very complex figure. He was known for both his patronage of the arts and his ruthlessness.
Hmm.
That tension between brilliance and brutality is part of what makes him and Budapest's story so fascinating.
So Budapest was hitting its Renaissance stride.
And then, bam.
The Ottomans. That must have been a game changer.
Absolutely. The Battle of Mohacs in 1526 marked the beginning of,
Ottoman rule.
exactly,
Yeah.
almost 150 years of Ottoman rule. And you can still see traces of that era today.
I bet. Especially in the architecture, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned Turkish bathhouses earlier. Are those from the Ottoman period?
Absolutely. The Rudis baths, for example, date back to the 16th century. Imagine soaking in those thermal waters surrounded by Ottoman-era architecture.
Wow, it's like a time capsule.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got Romans, Magyars, Mongols, Ottomans, all leaving their mark on Budapest. It's amazing. What comes next in this epic saga?
Well, the 19th century was a pivotal time for both Budapest and Hungary as a whole. It was a period of intense struggle for independence from Habsburg rule.
Ah, right. And that led to the creation of the Austro-Hungarian Empire in 1867.
Exactly.
The Austro-Hungarian Empire. Empresses, grand palaces, waltz music. Did Budapest get in on that action?
Oh, big time. Budapest became the co-capital of this vast empire,
Yeah.
alongside Vienna.
Wow.
And that meant Big changes for the city. New bridges, grand boulevards, elegant buildings.
It must have been quite a transformation.
It was like Budapest went from a charming town to a cosmopolitan metropolis practically overnight.
Amazing. So Budapest was living its best imperial life right up until the 20th century hit. And, well, things got a bit messy then, didn't they? What happened to Budapest during the World Wars?
Yeah, World War I is spelled the end of the Austro-Hungarian Empire,
Right.
and that left Budapest in a tough spot.
I bet.
But it was World War II that really devastated the
It's
city.
been awful.
It was heavily bombed, besieged. And tragically, the Jewish community of Budapest suffered immensely during the Holocaust.
It's hard to imagine what the city and its people went through during those times. Were there any glimmers of hope amidst all that tragedy?
There were people like Raoul Wallenberg,
Raoul Wallenberg.
a Swedish diplomat, and Karl
That's
Lutz,
so...
a Swiss diplomat.
Uh.
They both risked their lives to save thousands of Jewish people.
Wow.
Their stories are truly inspiring.
Okay, so Budapest survived 2 world wars, but then it ended up under Soviet control, right?
Right.
That must have been another huge change.
It was. The post-war period brought a new set of challenges for Budapest as it became part of the Eastern Bloc.
I can imagine.
The communist government rebuilt the city, but they also imposed a very restrictive political and social system.
So from imperial capital to communist city-state, Budapest has seen it all. But through it all, its spirit remained unbroken, didn't it?
It did. Even under Soviet rule, Budapest remained a vibrant cultural hub, and it became a focal point of resistance. The 1956 uprising is a great example of that.
Right, the Hungarian Revolution. A valiant but ultimately tragic attempt to break free. Budapest just keeps rising from the ashes, doesn't it? It's incredible.
It's a city that refuses to be defined by its past. Instead, it learns from it and grows stronger.
I love that.
And speaking of growth, let's fast forward to the present. What's life like in modern-day Budapest?
All right, bring on the Budapest of today, but we'll have to save that for part 2.
Welcome back. Ready for more Budapest?
Oh, absolutely. It's like Budapest is a time traveler, you know?
I know exactly what you mean.
With one foot in the past and the other stepping into the future.
Right.
But what's it actually like to live in Budapest today? What makes it tick?
Well, for starters, imagine a city where you can wander through medieval squares 1 minute
Okay.
and then stumble upon a buzzing tech hub or a hidden speakeasy the next.
Wow.
That's the magic of Budapest.
So it's not just a museum city, it's a...
It's a living, breathing metropolis.
I love that. What makes it such a great place to live, besides that?
Well, the public transportation is amazing.
Oh, really?
Budapest has this fantastic network of metros, trams, buses, even boats.
No
You
kidding.
can get anywhere in the city quickly and affordably.
No soul-crushing commutes. What else?
Budapest really embraces its outdoor spaces.
Okay, yeah.
It's got tons of parks and gardens, you know.
I remember reading about Margaret Island.
Oh, yeah. Margaret Island is amazing.
Right in the middle of the Danube. Sounds like the perfect place to just chill.
It is. It's a total haven of peace and tranquility.
Yeah.
Walking paths, gardens, even thermal baths.
Wait, thermal baths on the island?
On the island.
Okay, that's it. I'm booking a ticket. Now,
Yeah.
what other green spaces would you recommend?
Well, if you want something a bit more lively, there's City Park.
City Park.
It's got the Budapest Zoo, the Botanical Garden,
That's fun.
the Széchenyi thermal baths, you know, those stunning pictures you've seen,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and even Vajdahunyad Castle.
Hold on. A castle in a park.
A castle in a park?
What's the story there?
It's actually this whimsical architectural mashup built in 1896
Wow.
for the millennial celebrations of the Hungarian conquest.
Yeah.
It's got Romanesque, Gothic, Renaissance, Baroque,
All in one castle?
all in one. It's wild.
That's incredible. Okay, so Budapest has parks and castles, but what about food? Any must-tries?
Oh, the food in Budapest is an adventure.
yeah.
You've got to try traditional Hungarian dishes
Like,
goulash and chicken paprikash. But there's also a really vibrant international food scene
nice.
and tons of trendy cafes and bars.
Speaking of bars, you have to tell me about the ruin bars.
Ruin bars. Okay, so picture this.
Yeah.
You walk into a bar, right?
Okay.
And it's like stepping into a post-apocalyptic art installation.
What?
These are abandoned buildings off of the old Jewish quarter
Okay.
that have been transformed into these funky bohemian hangouts.
So cool.
Mismatched furniture, graffiti art, fairy lights everywhere. It's a vibe.
That sounds so Budapest. Taking something old and forgotten and turning it into something new and exciting.
Exactly.
Ruin bars are officially on my list. What about the cultural scene?
Oh, Budapest is overflowing with artistic energy. Opera, classical music, contemporary art, theater, you name it.
Amazing.
The Hungarian State Opera House is a masterpiece of architecture, and it hosts world-class performances.
I bet.
But you can also find these smaller, independent venues showcasing really cutting-edge work, too.
So it's got the big names, A&D, the up-and-coming artists.
Exactly.
I'm sensing a theme here. Budapest blends its historical heritage with a modern, creative spirit.
You got it. And that goes for its museums, too. You can explore the Museum of Fine Arts, admiring masterpieces.
Okay.
Or step into the House of Terror, a museum located in the former headquarters of the Communist secret police.
Oh, wow. That's intense.
It offers a really stark look into Hungary's totalitarian past.
So Budapest doesn't shy away from its history, even the dark parts.
Not at all. It confronts it head-on.
I respect that. Okay, let's lighten the mood a bit. What about festivals?
Oh, Budapest knows how to party. There's the Szeged Festival every August.
Szeged Festival?
It's on Óbuda Island. It's one of the biggest music festivals in all of Europe.
Wow.
Hundreds of thousands of people come from all over the world.
I can only imagine the energy. Any other must-see events?
If you're into classical music, there's the Budapest Spring Festival.
Okay.
It's a citywide celebration of music, dance, and theater. And for foodies, the Budapest Wine Festival and the Budapest Palinka Festival are fantastic.
Palinka? What's that?
It's a traditional Hungarian fruit brandy.
Oh, interesting.
Fair warning, though, it's strong stuff.
Okay, good to know. Parks, castles, ruin bars, festivals, strong brandy. What more could you ask for?
Budapest really does have something for everyone. It blends history, culture, and modern life in a way that's just intoxicating.
I love it. But to really understand its magic, we need to go deeper, right?
Exactly. We need to explore the very foundations on which this city is built.
You're talking about its geography.
It's geography. Let's take a break and come back for part 3 to uncover those forces that have shaped this city.
All right, we're back, ready to get down to earth.
Literally.
Exactly. Budapest's geography, it's fascinating how it can shape a city's destiny. It's not just about pretty landscapes, right?
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
It's like this invisible hand, guiding its history, its culture, its whole personality. We talked about Buda's hills and Pest being flat, but there's so much more going on.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit. Look at Budapest geographically. Where exactly is it, and how has that location, that spot on the map, how has that influenced it?
So Budapest sits right in the heart of the Carpathian Basin, smack dab in the middle of Hungary. And this location has always been a crossroads, a natural meeting point for trade routes. East and west, north and south, they all came together here.
So Budapest was destined to be a connector, a hub of exchange. Makes sense, given its history as a center of trade, of empires even.
Exactly. And the Danube River flowing right through the city, it's a huge part of that story.
More than just a pretty backdrop, right?
Okay. Oh, way more. It's been a vital artery for transportation, trade, communication for centuries.
The Danube is practically a character in its own right. It's interesting how the city is built on both sides of the river, almost like it's giving the Danube a hug.
And that hug, it's been both a blessing and a curse. The Danube brought life and prosperity, but it's also prone to flooding. That's been a constant threat.
Speaking of that hug, those bridges connecting Buda and Pest, the Chain Bridge, Margaret Bridge.
Liberty Bridge.
They're not just architectural marvels, are they? They're lifelines.
Exactly. They're symbols of connection, and triumphs of engineering.
Yeah.
How Budapest has learned to live with and even celebrate its sometimes temperamental river.
Okay, so we've got the strategic location, the Danube. But what about the landscape itself? Buda is hilly, but tell me more. What kind of hills are we talking about?
The Buda Hills are actually quite fascinating, geologically speaking. They're mainly made up of limestone and dolomite, and those are pretty easily eroded by water. Over millions of years, that erosion created all these caves beneath the hills. Some of them are huge. You can actually explore them.
Wait, underground adventures in Budapest. Now I have to go. What about the highest and lowest points in the city? I'm guessing the lowest has something to do with the Danube.
You got it. The lowest point is right along the banks of the Danube, about 96 meters above sea level. And the highest, that would be Janos Hill, way up in the Buda Hills, 527 meters, quite a range.
It's amazing how geography shapes a city's vibe, The Buda Hills, they create incredible views, but I bet they also affect things like the weather.
Oh, absolutely. The Buddha Hills create what's called a rain shadow effect.
A rain shadow.
Yeah, which basically means Buddha tends to be a bit drier and sunnier than Pest,
Yeah.
and those hills are home to a really unique ecosystem. Forests, meadows, even vineyards clinging to the slopes.
Vineyards. Okay, I'm sold. But before I book my flight, we have to talk about the thermal springs. Tell me about this liquid gold.
Ah, yes. Budapest is one of the few capitals in the world blessed with thermal springs, and not just a few over 80.
80.
They produce millions of liters of mineral-rich thermal water every single day.
That's incredible. And that feeds all those amazing bathhouses, right?
Exactly. They've been used for bathing and healing for centuries. They're full of minerals, said to have all these therapeutic benefits. Budapest is often called the city of spas for a reason.
History, culture, ruin bars, thermal spas, it's got it all. I'm getting serious wanderlust over here.
Well, I think we've painted a pretty vivid picture, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. Layered history, dynamic present, and all shaped by these incredible geographical forces. It's amazing.
It really is.
We've covered so much ground, literally, from Roman ruins to those trendy ruin bars, the heights of Janos Hill to those soothing thermal baths. Budapest has captured our imaginations.
It's a city that just draws you in.
It really does. What's the takeaway from all this? What have we learned from this deep dive?
I think Budapest shows us how nature and human history, they're constantly interacting, weaving together to create something truly unique. Cities are living, evolving things, shaped by both forces of nature and the ingenuity of humankind.
It's a testament to that resilience of the human spirit, that drive to build, to create, to overcome challenges, all within the context of this really remarkable setting. Budapest has faced some darkness, but it's always emerged stronger, more vibrant, more captivating.
Absolutely. And it leaves us with this question. If you could visit one place in Budapest, based on what we've talked about,
Yeah.
where would it be and why? What sparked your curiosity the most? Hold on to that thought and let it inspire you to explore this incredible city.
Budapest awaits. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
All right, strap yourselves in because we're tackling a big one today, the Mongol invasions and conquests. You guys really threw down the gauntlet with this topic.
Yeah, it's a doozy.
We're going deep into the Wikipedia article on this, and let me tell you, it's quite a journey, the rise and fall of the largest contiguous land empire in history.
I mean, can you imagine?
From the Pacific Ocean all the way to Central Europe.
That's a lot of ground to cover.
It's mind-boggling. And what's really fascinating is it wasn't a slow, gradual thing, this expansion.
Oh, no, not at all.
It just exploded onto the world stage in the 13th century. They conquered vast territories, like in a whirlwind of campaigns.
Almost like a force of nature, you know?
Yeah. And the source material points out that it wasn't just about brute force. Their nomadic lifestyle, it really played a key role.
Oh, absolutely.
The Mongol cavalry, they were so dependent on grazing for their horses, and that actually dictated when they could conquer.
Makes sense, right.
It had to be during warmer seasons when the horses could, get the sustenance they needed.
Got to keep those horses happy. And there's this theory that a period of really favorable weather right before their expansion, like unusually good weather, it really gave them a boost.
How so?
Well, think about it. More rain means more grass, and more grass means more horses.
Right. More horses, bigger army.
Exactly. Bigger army, more power.
It's like nature was on their side. And even though the empire itself fragmented in the late 13th century, the impact of Mongol rule, it really continued, especially in places like China, Persia, and India.
Oh, yeah, for generations.
Generations. The scope of their impact is just incredible. Where do we even begin with all this?
Right. It's a lot to unpack.
It is. I was thinking maybe we could go region by region like the article does. Maybe start where it all began. Central Asia.
Sounds good to me.
Genghis Khan uniting all those nomadic tribes, it's pretty mind-blowing. The Merkits, the Tatars, the Mongols themselves, all brought together.
He was a unifying force, that's for sure. It wasn't easy bringing all those tribes under one banner.
Right. And he wasn't all about conquest. He made some smart alliances, too.
Yeah.
Like the Uyghurs. They were a Turkic group.
Oh, right.
They actually chose to surrender and join the empire. It speaks to his political skills.
That's quite the strategist. But it wasn't all diplomacy and handshakes, was it?
No, definitely not. I mean, some of the stuff in this article is just horrific.
Yeah, there are some pretty dark chapters.
Like the massacre at Urgench after the city fell. Every Mongol warrior, they were ordered to execute 24 people.
It's hard to even fathom that level of brutality.
It really is. It makes you think about the cost of war, you know, the devastating cost of resistance.
Absolutely. It raises an interesting question, though. How did they manage to dominate so widely? I mean, yes, there was brutality, but they were also incredibly strategic.
So it was more than just brute force.
Oh, for sure. Take their divide and conquer tactic, for example. They used it brilliantly against the Alans and the Cumans.
The humans, or the Kipchaks, right?
Yeah, that's right. They'd disrupt alliances, target one group, then move on to the next. It was a very systematic dismantling of their enemies.
Wow, that's ruthless, but clever.
And you know what's fascinating? The Kipchaks, the ones who were defeated and absorbed into the Mongol army, they later became a major part of the Mamluk army.
Really?
Yeah, and that army defeated the Mongols at the Battle of Ain Jalut. It's kind of like history coming full circle, isn't it?
It really is. That also reminds me of how they incorporated conquered people into their army. They were constantly replenishing their forces.
Exactly. And think about it. They were fighting alongside people who knew the land, who knew their enemy's tactics. Brilliant, really.
It is. And they even established those Chinese military colonies in conquered areas, right? To really solidify their control. So from Central Asia, they turned their attention west, towards the riches of West Asia, Persia, Iraq, and beyond. What jumps out at you about their conquests in that region?
Well, I think the siege of Baghdad in 1258, that's a real turning point. It was the fall of a major Islamic center, a city that had been a hub of scholarship and culture for centuries, just gone.
Yeah, it must have sent shockwaves through the entire Islamic world. And they even launched raids as far as Palestine. Can you believe that? I mean, the scale of their ambition, it's just incredible.
They were unstoppable, it seemed. But, you know, they did have their limits.
They did.
Yeah, the Battle of Ain Jalut, that's in what's now southeastern Galilee, it marked their first major defeat.
So they weren't invincible after all.
Not quite. And that defeat, it actually stopped their advance into Egypt and North Africa. It's a good reminder that even the most powerful empires have their breaking point.
Right. And something that often gets overlooked is how innovative the Mongol army was. During their campaigns in West Asia, Hulagu Khan, Genghis Khan's grandson, he had 1,000 squads of northern Chinese engineers with him.
Engineers? What for?
Yeah, these engineers, they brought with them all this expertise in siege warfare and even gunpowder technology.
Wow, so they were incorporating technology from their conquests, too.
Exactly. It shows how diverse the empire was, how they could adapt and use the strengths of the people they conquered. Pretty impressive, really.
Incredibly organized. All right, well, let's shift gears a bit. Let's head east now to East Asia. That region faced, wave after wave of Mongol invasions.
Another whole chapter in this story.
Absolutely. East Asia was a prime target for the Mongols. They really wanted to conquer China.
It was a huge undertaking, right? Conquering such a vast, well-established civilization.
Oh, yeah. It was a long, hard-fought campaign. And it was Kublai Khan, another one of Genghis Khan's grandsons, who finally established the Yuan dynasty in China in 1271. But he wasn't just a conqueror, you know. He was also a pretty savvy ruler.
Oh, yeah? How so?
Well, he understood how important it was to consolidate power, so he actually incorporated defected soldiers from the dynasties he'd conquered into his own army.
Wait, so he was using his former enemies' soldiers?
Exactly. He created what they called the Han Army and the newly submitted army. It was genius, really.
It's like turning your weakness into a strength, right? And it probably reduced the risk of future rebellions.
That's exactly right. He was a master at consolidating power. And Kublai Khan wasn't satisfied with just China either. He launched 9 invasions of Korea.
9? Wow.
Yeah. He eventually forced them into vassalage for 80 years. And he even tried to invade Japan twice.
But didn't those attempts fail?
They did. Those famous kamikaze winds, those typhoons, they scattered his fleets and ruined his plans.
Mother Nature intervening again. It's incredible that even with those setbacks, they still managed to conquer Sakhalin Island.
Kublai Khan really wanted to control not just the mainland, but the seas around it, too. His ambition was boundless, and those victories in East Asia, they cemented the Mongol Empire's position on the world stage.
So they conquered Central Asia, West Asia, East Asia. Where to next?
Well, let's move north now, to the vast and often brutal expanse of North Asia. Siberia, to be precise.
Now that must have been a tough one to conquer. Those Siberian tribes, they were known for being tough and resistant to outsiders.
It wasn't easy, that's for sure. It all started with Genghis Khan and his son, Jochi. They led the charge against many of the Siberian tribes, and then incorporated them into the Mongol military structure.
Smart move. If you can't beat them, join them. But they didn't just demand subservience, right?
No, they were actually quite clever about it. They demanded tributes that were tailored to the region's resources. So things like gerfalcons, furs, and those cooties horses.
The ones known for their endurance.
Exactly. They knew what they were doing, and they also demanded women as tribute.
Oh, wow. That raises all sorts of questions about the social and cultural impact of those conquests.
It does, doesn't it? And just like in Central Asia, the Mongols established Chinese settlements in Siberia to extend their reach.
So they were good at administration as well as conquering.
Very much so. And to maintain communication and collect tribute over those vast distances, they even set up dog sled stations in western Siberia.
Dog sled stations. That's incredible. Imagine the logistical challenges of running an empire that big.
It's mind-boggling. And eventually, Kublai Khan's Yuan dynasty, they gained control over huge chunks of central and eastern Siberia. Their reach was just phenomenal.
And that's not even the end of it. They pushed into Eastern and Central Europe too, right? We'll do a whole other deep dive on
Oh,
that.
absolutely. The Mongol invasions of Europe, that's a story for another time. But it's clear we've only just scratched the surface of this incredible empire.
So we've journeyed with the Mongols across Central Asia, West Asia, and even East Asia. But now it's time to explore their forays into South Asia, a region that, from what I've read, posed quite a challenge even for them.
That's right. They did make some inroads into the Indian subcontinent, occupying parts of northwestern South Asia for a while. But they never quite achieved the same level of dominance there as they did in other regions.
Yeah, what was it about South Asia that made it so difficult for them to conquer? I mean, they seemed unstoppable elsewhere.
Well, for one thing, the geography and climate were quite different from what they were used to. The heat and humidity of the Indian subcontinent would have been tough on both the Mongol soldiers and their horses.
Right, their horses were so essential to their tactic.
Exactly. And then there was the fierce resistance they encountered from local powers. The Delhi Sultanate, for example, they put up a really strong fight and stopped several Mongol advances further east.
So even the mighty Mongols could be stopped. It seems like strong local resistance was key.
Absolutely. And it's worth noting that the Mongols weren't always about brute force conquest. Sometimes they were willing to negotiate and form alliances, especially when it made strategic sense.
So they were adaptable, willing to change their approach depending on the situation.
Very much so. It makes you wonder how those interactions, even if they didn't lead to full-on conquest, might have influenced the political landscape of the region.
It's fascinating to think about.
It is, and there's a lot of debate among historians about the lasting impact of the Mongol presence in South Asia. They clearly didn't achieve the same level of control as they did elsewhere, but they did leave their mark, even if it was more subtle. And it's interesting to consider the later Mughal Empire, founded by Babur, who had Mongol ancestry.
So even though they didn't conquer all of South Asia, their influence resonated in some pretty significant ways.
Precisely. All right, well, let's shift gears again and head down to Southeast Asia. Kublai Khan, continuing his grandfather's legacy of expansion, he also set his sights on this region.
Southeast Asia. I remember from the article that the Yuan dynasty launched some pretty intense invasions into Burma.
They did. Between 1277 and 1287, they launched a series of campaigns that ultimately led to the collapse of the pagan kingdom.
Wow, so they managed to topple a major kingdom even that far south. But I also recall that their experience in Southeast Asia wasn't all smooth sailing, was it?
Not exactly. While they did achieve some big victories in Burma, they also faced fierce resistance. The Burmese Mindseng Kingdom, for example, they managed to push back against a later Mongol invasion in 1301.
So even in a region as fragmented as Southeast Asia, local powers could still put up a good fight against the Mongols.
Absolutely. It really shows that local knowledge, strong leadership, and a determined defense could make a difference, even against such a powerful force.
Right. And I think it also highlights the Mongols' adaptability. I mean, they were clearly masters of brute force, but they also understood the importance of diplomacy and economic leverage.
Oh, absolutely. They weren't just about crushing their enemies. They were also quite skilled at striking deals and using their power to extract concessions.
The classic carrot and stick approach, right? Conquer when you have to, but also negotiate and use the threat of force to get what you want.
Exactly. And the impact of their presence in Southeast Asia went beyond just immediate military outcomes. The article suggests that the Mongol campaigns, even the ones that weren't outright conquests, they still contributed to some major changes in the region.
Like what?
Well, there were significant population displacements, for example, and shifts in power dynamics. It's believed that those migrations and disruptions actually contributed to the rise of powerful Thai states like Lan Na, Sukhothai, and Lan Xang.
So even in their setbacks, they indirectly shaped the course of history. It's like a ripple effect.
Exactly. You can't underestimate those unintended consequences. Speaking of consequences, though, I think it's time we addressed the elephant in the room.
You mean the human cost of all these conquests?
Yeah. It's easy to get caught up in the military strategies and the politics, but we can't forget about the millions of lives lost, the communities destroyed, the suffering.
That's a sobering thought.
It is. And it's hard to get an accurate estimate of the death toll. The records aren't complete, and it's difficult to separate deaths directly caused by the Mongol conquest from those caused by other factors like famine or disease.
Right, it's all intertwined.
Exactly. But even the most conservative estimates are pretty horrifying. Some scholars believe that somewhere between 20 and 57 million people died as a result of the Mongol campaigns.
Those numbers are just staggering. And that doesn't even include the Black Death, which ravaged so many of the regions affected by the Mongol conquests.
Right. The Black Death was a devastating pandemic, and its spread was likely aided, at least in part, by the increased trade and movement of people that happened during the Mongol period.
It's a tragic reminder of how interconnected everything is, and how events in one part of the world can have such profound and often unintended consequences elsewhere.
It really is. And it brings us to another uncomfortable truth about the Mongols. They used what we might consider early forms of biological warfare.
Biological warfare.
Yeah. There's a particularly chilling example from the Siege of Kaffa in 1346. The Mongols, who were besieging the city, they catapulted plague-infected corpses over the walls.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
It's a pretty horrific thought. And it seems likely that this contributed to the spread of the plague. It raises some serious questions about the ethics of warfare, even back then.
It does. It makes you realize that even with all their achievements, the Mongols were responsible for a lot of suffering and destruction.
Absolutely. It's important to acknowledge both the positive and the negative aspects of their legacy. It's a complicated story.
It is, but it's a story that needs to be told in all its complexity.
I agree. And I think it's one of the things that makes studying the Mongols so fascinating. They challenge our assumptions and force us to grapple with those complexities.
So we've covered the military and political sides of the Mongol Empire, and now we're starting to explore some of the darker aspects. Where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's time to look at how this period impacted trade and cultural exchange across Eurasia. That's a fascinating and often overlooked part of their story.
So we've really gone deep on the Mongol conquests across Asia and into Europe. Their military strategies, their political moves, and of course the devastating human cost. We've covered a lot.
Yeah, we have.
But now what I'm really interested in is this idea that despite their violent expansion, the Mongol Empire actually helped to connect different parts of the world. It seems kind of counterintuitive, right? Like, how can an empire built on conquest also be an engine for trade and cultural exchange?
Well, it is one of those interesting paradoxes of history. The Mongols, who were known for their, brutality in many cases, they also ended up playing a major role in opening up trade routes and creating connections across Eurasia. They basically created an environment where goods, ideas, and people could move around more freely than ever before.
So was this something they did on purpose? Or was it more of an accidental side effect of their conquests?
Probably a bit of both, to be honest. You see, the Mongols, being nomadic people, they already had a long tradition of trading and interacting with different cultures. And when they built their empire, it made sense for them to keep those trade routes secure and open. I mean, they needed those routes not just for trade, but also to communicate and maintain control over their vast territories.
Makes sense. Keep the information and the goods flowing. But how did all this trade actually lead to more cultural exchange?
Well, think of those trade routes as like highways for culture. Along with the merchants and their goods, you also had travelers, missionaries, diplomats, all sorts of people moving back and forth, sharing ideas and knowledge.
So it wasn't just about silks and spices.
Oh, it was much more than that.
Yeah.
Technology spread too, like papermaking and printing, which went from China to the West thanks to the Mongols. And in the other direction, Islamic astronomy and math traveled eastward.
Wow, so it was a two-way street.
Absolutely. And there's even evidence suggesting that the Mongols helped introduce gunpowder technology to Europe. Can you imagine the impact of that?
Gunpowder. Yeah, that changed everything. Warfare was never the same after that.
It's a great example of how actions can have these huge unintended consequences, isn't it? The Mongols wanted to conquer, but in doing so, they completely changed the course of history in ways they probably never imagined.
It really makes you think about the ripple effects of history, huh?
It does. And another interesting thing about the Mongols is that despite their reputation for being ruthless, they were actually pretty tolerant of different religions and cultures within their empire.
Really? Why is that?
Well, I think they realized that trying to force everyone to conform to their own beliefs would just be a recipe for disaster. It was much more practical and probably a lot easier to allow some degree of diversity.
So they were pragmatic about it.
Exactly. And that pragmatism, I think, is a big part of what made them so successful. They were willing to adapt and learn from the people they conquered.
So that they were conquerors, but they were also learners.
In a way, yes. They incorporated elements of other cultures into their own. They weren't just about destroying everything in their path.
That's a really important point. It makes them seem much more, well, human, I guess.
It does, doesn't it? And I think it reminds us that history is never black and white. It's always full of shades of gray.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've come to the end of our deep dive on the Mongol Empire. It's been an incredible journey.
It has. From the steppes of Central Asia to the jungles of Southeast Asia, we've covered a lot of ground.
We've seen their military brilliance, their political savvy, and yes, the terribly human cost of their conquests. But we've also seen their unexpected role in connecting different parts of the world and facilitating cultural exchange.
It's a complex legacy, that's for sure.
It is, but it's a legacy that continues to fascinate us and challenge our understanding of history. And as always, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep digging deeper into the past.
There's always more to discover.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.